Hi everyone, welcome to the Association of Professional Sri Lankans webinar series. These will be a series of webinars and videos that we'll upload to our YouTube website, APSL Media. Today's session will be around us as a community as we face the reality that is COVID-19. What hurdles and things do we need to think about during this pandemic now and post-pandemic? So my name's Tariq Salih. I'm one of the vice presidents in the APSL looking after professional development. I'm joined today on the panel by Rohan de Alwis, who is a solicitor by profession, company director, and a past president of the APSL. As I said, we'll run a number of these webinars and videos, and they'll be published on our APSL media page, so please do visit the page. So I will jump right into our questions and ask Rohan de Alwis to answer them as we go through. So Rohan, if you are ready, I'm going to kick off with our first question. So during the pandemic, a number of people will go through various challenges. One in particular will be around their employment. And with the UK job retention scheme or furlough scheme coming to an end by October this year, what do you think of the job security and the job market over the next 12 months?
Thank you, Tariq. It's a good question, a very relevant question today, because the coronavirus job retention scheme or the furlough scheme will come to an end by the 31st of October. Now, since the 1st of April, when the scheme kicked in, paying 80% of the money, contractual payments to the affected staff, those who were furloughed by companies. Now, this comes to an end at the end of October. And in my opinion, and I think that will be the consensus amongst not just lawyers and business people, but also all human resource professionals as well, that that will be the start of unemployment numbers rising rapidly. Now, I say this, it was only the other day, the United Kingdom and the OECD figures announced rather, that the United Kingdom economy shrank. And this year alone, it shrunk by 10%. And next year, it will go down further to another 5%. So by the end of 2021, our economy would have shrunk. Also, last month or in the last quarter, the GDP in the UK also shrank, went down by 20%. Now, the corona pandemic has affected all sectors. It's not just one sector, the manufacturing or anything like services, etc. It's across the board, not just to the UK, for the UK, but across the world as well. But we are talking here about the unemployment prospects in the UK. So if you look at, again, from government published figures, the unemployment rate in 2019 was 3.8. And by the end of next year, it's going to triple, and it will be in excess of 9% of the working force or the labor force in the UK. So it's a huge jump from a modest 3.8% to slightly in excess of 9%. So sadly, jobs will be hard to get, and those who are lucky to get jobs will not necessarily be having permanent jobs. They will be more fixed-term contracts or temporary contracts. So, Tariq, I think it's important for our members to know now, because a lot of optimism is coming back into the economy, that the bad days are over. From Monday, the 15th of June, people can go out and do whatever they want within reason. And it's only the restaurants and public houses, etc., are going to be shut. Everything else will be open. yes, but in my mind, we need to make our members aware and the viewers aware that there are hard times to come in front of us for the next 18 months at least.
Thank you, Rohan. Really helpful to kind of gauge the numbers and the figures and base our kind of judgments on that evidence. So with that in mind, and the job market being uncertain, people will want to know how they gear up to support themselves during this time. So can you tell us how we can help ourselves during this pandemic? Are there things we can do given the market is unstable and uncertain? Any tips or tricks you can suggest to us?
Yes, I mean, the government of the United Kingdom has supported the entire workforce in the UK by launching the job retention scheme, paying 80% of their contractual salary. That's kept us going, and the unemployment figures very low. But the government has also printed money or quantitative easing to the value of almost 700 billion pounds. Now, there is a point at which the public service or the government can help people. So I'm afraid, just like how the government has protected the society or the public people at large in the UK, it will be actually down to us as individuals, whether it's an individual or an individual family, as the nucleus or a self-help scheme. So I'm afraid we have to now look after ourselves, get ready for the bad times to come. So if you thought, as I said before, the bad times have come to an end, no, it's just the beginning of more challenging times ahead. So one of the things in a conventional economy is that a wage earner or a family unit relying upon one salary check to another should have at least 3 months living expenses by way of savings. Now, a lot of people will have at least 3 months savings, but I have to say, in the last 15 years, with debt levels rising, very many families have not had 3 months living expenses saved. Now, today, the economists and the experts say that it's to weather the next 12 to 18 months, you should have at least, or rather ideally, 6 months living expenses. Now, they say ideally because 3 months was a challenge for a number of people. And when I say number of people, we're talking of hundreds of thousands of people in the labor force, families and units. So I'm afraid the ideal savings or the living expenses should be 6 months. An interesting statement, a very difficult way to achieve those that particular object. But let's soul search. Let's look at ourselves. Let's look and see how we can help ourselves. Now, to start with, in the last 3.5 months or 3 months since I think the middle of March, I believe, when the lockdown started, practically everybody has been at home. And let's assume that 70 to 80% of us who have been at home have been receiving 80% of their contractual salary or the previous monthly salary. So they're 20% short. However, we have all saved on transportation costs, whether you rely upon public transport or whether you drive your car to work, car parking charges, the coffee that you have had in the morning, midday meals, sandwich, whatever from a local cafe, and also magazines, subscription charges, and the gym membership. A lot of young people, well, these days up to 60 years of age, people go to subscribe gyms, and possibly people above that age limit as well. So coffee, the sandwiches, the gym membership, if you had a second car, I mean, is it lying, doing nothing at home? Fundamentally, you have to ask yourself, do you need a car anymore? Because if you have relying upon public transport, you could get to the station one way or the other by either Uber, which is slightly expensive, or public transport from there to work. So all of that, by staying at home, we have saved a fair amount of money. And that's the other side of the coin. Whilst people's earnings have been restricted to 80%, their outgoings have also slowed down, not necessarily halved, but 80 to 90, sorry, it's more than halved. So all of a sudden, the outgoings have been staying in the bank. So that's a passive saving that you already have. Now, in addition to that, there have been rent mortgage holidays. If you had hire purchase commitments, there have been, some of them have been put on hold. And also, if you are paying as a self-employed person in income tax and value-added tax, VAT, etc., they've all been put on hold. So there is substantial amount of money, cash flow, within your account. Hopefully, that should be the case. Now, my tip, rather than an advice, is get money out and put it into a savings account. Now, when I say savings account, you don't have to actually visit the bank these days. If you have an online normal current account, most of the high street recognized banks have the facility or the ability for you to create a sweep account or a savings, connected savings account. Put that money in there. It's not going to earn you any real interest. You might get 0.1% per annum if you're lucky on your £100 or £1,000. But that's fine. Just keep that. So keep saving that money until you build a buffer of at least 6 months of living expenses. So that's the bare essentials. I think that's very important. And another point a lot of people tell me is, it's Rohan, you can say all of that, but as soon as the money comes, it's all gone because you have had an overdraft and you have overdrawn on it. My answer is, and it's a practical savings tip, is that if you get paid today, before this time tomorrow, within 24 hours or the first thing the following morning, you get that savings or the extra money that you want to allocate into a savings account in there. And then you survive the rest of the month with the monies that you have. So self-help starts with looking after or building that living expenses for at least 6 months. Don't worry, if you build up for 1 month, that's an achievement. Then that will incentivize you at that stage to keep saving the funds until you reach 6 months. And believe me, once you reach 6 months, you will want to keep saving because you got used to, addicted to the habit of savings. Because remember, up to now, until the coronavirus job retention scheme came and lockdown started, we've been used to spending money. Yes, we earn money, we spend, but reduce heavily, slow down heavily on your expenditure. Another, and again, these are difficult times, you have to think unconventionally. So another point that you might consider is, can I make or create another income stream, passive income? Now, if you're a professional or if you're a 9-to-5 normal wage earner, the first thing that will come to your mind and mine is, I can't do anything else than what I have been doing and what I have been trained to do. Think outside of the box. So, I mean, I know people. I mean, there was a public example of a British Airways pilot when he was put on lockdown. So he was getting 80% of his salary, subject to a maximum of 2,500, assuming the pilot gets paid about £5,000 to £6,000 a month. This guy was getting 2,500. It was in the national papers, newspapers. Guess what he did? He went in, because he gets his 2,500. He became a delivery driver. I mean, he was enjoying the job as well as earning money. But if he was a conventional thinking professional pilot, he would say, well, I can only fly planes. I can't do any other thing. So I'll stay at home, grumble, and get the 2,500 a month. No, this guy did a second job, a passive income. I mean, as individuals, think of cooking and delivering meals, again, small scale. I mean, I was watching a video the other day, I think it was about 2 days ago. This person has created a fresh vegetable juice company. Is she making millions? No, she's making 20 to 50,000 pounds a year extra. That's that comfort zone. And one day that business will grow into a bigger business. If you have a spare room, I mean, this is difficult with privacy, and if you have a family, you may think of renting a particular room, a spare room. You can teach children, adults. Tuition is a great source of income these days. And also, if you haven't got anything else to do, upskill yourself. That's an investment in yourself. I know you're spending money, but you are actually investing that money in yourself. So we professionals have a habit of blindly adding qualifications to our names, which is a fantastic thing if you've got the time and the money to do it. But again, as I said before, we live in uncertain times, very challenging times, where earning money is going to be difficult. So don't just blindly add qualifications if they are not of any benefit to you. So upskill for sure, and try and exploit that upskilling to earn more money, or the potential to earn money. So it's essential at the end of the day, Tariq, it's a very good question, but to sum up, that increase your monthly living expenditure to the equivalent of 6 months, reduce your expenditure, cash savings, generate that. So gone are the days when we relied upon one monthly paycheck to another.
Brilliant. Thank you for that insight, Rohan. Really helpful. So save money, invest in yourself, build a passive income if you can, and really be smart with your spending. And for those listening, we will have a webinar on building passive income very soon, so worth listening in for that. My next question is around redundancy, and in some cases this will be inevitable and this will be a worry for people, so it's important they know what they're entitled to. So if you are made redundant from your job, what are your entitlements?
Okay, Tariq. By law, English law provides a statutory redundancy protection, provided you have worked for a period of 2 years or more. You will receive what is called the basic safety net, called the statutory redundancy payment scheme. Now, I will be able to say, I think it's 1.5 weeks pay for each year of full employment, and then a week's pay after, I think, 5 years of work or whatever. Now, I'm not going to give you exactly what your entitlement is, but if you go on the web, online, put statutory redundancy ready reckoner, or just put how much will I get by way of statutory redundancy. The government, gov.uk, has a formula system where you simply fill in how long you worked for, how many years, what your weekly salary is, and your age. Press enter, you will get an answer. Now, this roughly works out to, sorry, not roughly, this works out to a maximum statutory, so government protection of £538 a week. So length of service is capped at 20 years, and weekly pay is capped at £538. And the maximum under the government scheme one will get if one is made redundant by their employer is £16,140. So it's not the minimum figure, it's the maximum. So somebody might get £538 if they worked for 2.5 years or whatever. So that's the bottom of the safety pit, so safety net rather. So statutory redundancy for anyone with continuous employment of 2 years or more, that is important. Now, somebody might actually ask the question, what is the position if my employer has gone into liquidation or into administration, what you and I call in normal language, gone bust, basically, become insolvent? If in those cases, in such a scenario, one has to apply to the government insolvency service. That's also an online application. You don't have to go anywhere. You can do it online and claim that money, which is what I said, the statutory redundancy payment from the government. But if your employer is still around, they're simply downsizing and making you redundant. They are by law forced to and obliged to make that payment to you. If they don't, then you can take action or report them to the government. And if they don't pay you, the government will pay that. But so that's your basic safety net. Now, a lot of many reputable employers will not only meet the statutory redundancy payment, but will pay you in excess. So that's called a voluntary redundancy scheme. And I think it will incentivize a lot of employees who feel that they are threatened by the prospect of unemployment, especially if they see that they can get another job elsewhere, either for the same salary or in this day and age for a lesser salary. They can actually get more money from the outgoing or from your current employer, which I call the outgoing employer, and build that as a nest egg for the future, and then get another job elsewhere. Difficult to find jobs, but that's the challenge. Some people are able to find jobs. Some people will go into self-employment because they've already been given from their outgoing employer a nest egg. So those are the two areas, Tariq. If one is made redundant, you get statutory redundancy or statutory redundancy plus, which is a voluntary redundancy scheme. Now, whether one gets this or a payment in excess of the amounts, after a certain, it's subject to a certain limit, which I can't remember how much it is, but again, this is all available on the government website, gov.uk. One can apply for state benefits, primarily universal credit. The universal credit scheme is available to any unemployed person. I think it's subject to a cash savings limit, and also housing benefits. So those two are further safety nets provided for by the UK government if one is unemployed and running low on funds. That's on the state side. Now on the private, basically from the family unit, if you remember, I said self-help is the best way forward in these current challenging times. You need to contact your mortgage lender and let them know that you are unemployed and that you are having cash flow problems. And as it is government policy through the various banks and lending institutions to give a mortgage repayment holiday. This does not shorten your mortgage, it prolongs the length of the mortgage. It will also increase the amount you have to pay because they're not going to write it off. But at least it gives you 3 to 6 months breathing space where money is required now for running the family, keeping ends meet, making ends meet, so that you have enough sufficient oxygen to breathe, basically. Now, the important thing is in this type of scenario, don't bury your head in sand. Face up to reality without postponing. Procrastination is your worst enemy. Just go head on, do whatever you need to do. There may be unpleasant, stressful issues. Get them out of your way so that thereafter you will feel a huge amount of relief, not necessarily satisfaction, but at least you have tackled what you had to tackle head on. I think that's the best. Those are the few tips, Tariq, I can think of right now.
Really helpful. Thank you. A couple of follow-up questions on that. So if someone is made redundant and they're issued notice, but they're furloughed, what's the situation then? And on a redundancy payment, is there any tax issues people should be aware of?
Right. Now that's a very relevant question, because when the furlough scheme was launched, not even the UK government thought about these questions. They simply launched it as an emergency relief fund. So you then go back to the fundamentals or the basics of employment law to find the answer. And then again, you have to think as to whether it's the chicken and egg situation, which came first. But it's fairly straightforward. Your employment contract came before the furlough scheme came into being. So the contract of employment will stipulate how much notice has to be given. And then the job retention scheme simply kicked in to assist people to pay 80% of the contractual salary. So if one is made redundant, the black and white answer is that they will have to give notice as per the contract of employment. If there are redundancies to be achieved by the employer, they have to launch a redundancy scheme, which kicks off by way of a consultation process. If there is trade union recognition at the office or the workplace, then through the trade unions, the employer will talk to the employees. Or if you have more than 20, then you have to notify the state as well, the Department of Labor and Employment, start the consultation process. Now, I'm not going to deal with the redundancy processes in this webinar. That's another long discussion, interesting discussion to be had. So the answer is it's full pay. So if the contract of employment says one has to be given 1 month's notice or 3 months' notice, then it will be 3 months' notice of full pay. Because remember, the contract of employment came before the furlough kicked in. Now that's the right answer. But believe me, this is why I said, Tariq, it's a very relevant question. There'll be enough employers in the United Kingdom who will run the redundancy notice scheme or the termination of employment scheme, notices, and pay them the required notice period based upon the 80% of the earnings. So this will lead to many or numerous employment tribunal applications for not having paid the right amounts of money under statutory dues. So the bottom line takeaway to your question is it will be based on contractual full pay. I hope I answered that question there.
Thank you, Rohan. I'm on to my final question now. And my question is really, it's a number of us are self-employed, number of us are underpaid employments. What are your thoughts on this in relation to being in the best position during a scenario that we're in?
Right. I guess you are asking whether self-employment is better than paid employment, or is that what you're wanting me to clarify?
Yeah. So I guess part of it's around that, but also we're under different processes and potentially legal frameworks when we're self-employed and when we're underpaid employment. I guess people will want to know what's more secure, what is more beneficial. Some might think, if you're in self-employment, work may not be guaranteed if you're in a specific industry or line of work. So just a view from you, knowing the markets you've worked in and your experience. Do you have any view on this?
Right, yeah. Thanks for clarifying that point. I think there is no right answer to whether self-employment has better prospects than paid employment. It all depends on a number of factors. First and foremost, it will depend on you, the individual. Some people will thrive and make progress in a self-employed environment, and others will actually really perform very well if the security, payment security, job security is provided for and taken care of by an employer. They will then thrive very well in paid employment. So that's why I said it's down to the individual. Now, self-employment has better tax prospects, better earning prospects, but it comes with the downside of not making any money. So I think that's the bottom line. Do you take risk? Are you a risk taker and make more money some of the time and the other times less money? Or are you going to average it out on 12 monthly payments from your employer? PAYE, pay as you earn related employment. Self-employment is by no means easy. To me, it's a 24/7. You may be an entrepreneur or you may be a businessman. You have to be hands-on, clued on. Yes, there are lots of business administration, management techniques of delegation, diversification, and lots of that. But before you get to that stage, you need to be fairly successful in making money, generating income rather, and then scaling it up, upscaling the business. So it's only then that you will get a little bit more free time to plan your future. So if you're starting off as an individual, it will be good in this current climate, slightly unconventional advice, if you can create a permanent or a relatively semi-permanent, nothing is permanent these days in the job market, an income stream as a PAYE or as an employee, and then look at self-employment as the next step forward. Now, there are also people, some of our colleagues as well, who have no option but to go for self-employment. Lawyers, for example, okay, yes, there are paid employed lawyers, but most lawyers in private practice go into partnerships and directorships, etc. They are in the self-employed category. But within those lawyers, you get people who are employed. It's the same if you're in the service sector. If you're a delivery driver, if you're an Uber driver, I know there is employment law, employment tribunal case law, which says that an Uber driver has to be treated or awarded the same benefits as an employee, even though he has no fixed income. So it's a difficult question to answer or to give a generic answer. It will be very much down to you how you want to look at your own career and life advancement. If you're taking risks at a young age, go for self-employment, but with a clear vision. A good 10-year plan, but have a mid-5-year review. But within that year 0 to year 5, have regular progress checks. And if you're doing well, if you're progressing in accordance with your business plan, then stick to it, you will succeed. But if you feel that you're not cut out for it, if you feel down when you're not making money, etc., or making progress, not every business will make money straight away within the first 3 years. And if you still got enthusiasm to be in self-employment, go for it. It will eventually lead to better rewards. Because the problem is, if I was asked the same question, Tariq, 20 years ago, I would say there was a big difference between paid monthly and salary employment and self-employment. Because at the end of the day, when you reach the age of 65 years of age, and most jobs then were permanent employment in one particular company, etc., you would get a good pension. Today, that golden pension schemes that we've had, they're no longer offered to any employee today. So the difference, in advantage, the benefits of PAYE, salaried employment, has diminished rapidly. And with the current economic crisis the world is facing, not just the United Kingdom or Sri Lanka for that matter, the world is facing, one has to look after oneself as far as income is concerned. So therefore, by choice, people will actually be drifting more towards self-employment.
Very helpful. Thank you, Rohan. And that concludes all of our questions. Just again, a huge thank you, Rohan, for answering those questions and providing your expert advice. Thank you to all those listening and watching this webinar. We'll be back with more. Thank you and see you soon.
Thank you, Tariq.